Hey everybody, how's it going? So, I'm back here in my little apothecary space. Soon to be a very large apothecary space as I don't know, by the time you're watching this we might be all the way done, but we're getting ready to, we just put in an order yesterday for this huge 500 square foot shed. It's like a playhouse looking thing with nice porch, and it will be turned into a full-on, like, own building in itself apothecary, running water, all that stuff, so I can have my kitchen back and just have this super crazy designated area for making my offerings. That's not why I'm here today. Today, you guys might have watched me gather up some of that Arnica. I made a video where we were way up in the mountains and I showed you what heartleaf Arnica looks like and all that good stuff. Well, now it's time to make her into medicine. And so you can head back and watch that video if you want to. But after we gathered her up, we went ahead and put her in our curing cabinet. Now, curing is where you cure it instead of dry it, and that's where you rely on extracting the moisture with a dehumidifier versus using heat or time to allow on evaporation. But don't worry, there's a video for that if you dig back through curing versus drying, and you can read about or watch about all the cool things that that is and how easy it is to do it. So today I'm here to show you how to make Arnica oil. And one thing that I've noticed somebody commented on when I'm like gathering Arnica, like how it crazy, like she grows everywhere, right? Like she grows in most areas, and she's pretty prolific when she does. Like there's a lot of her, and so it's crazy how much people like charge for like anything with Arnica in it, or like buying Arnica. You know, most herbal places they want, you know, upwards of $80 to $100 a pound for Arnica, which is kind of crazy. But I do understand that like this right here is only 1.5 ounces of Arnica, because when she dries up, when you cure her or dry her, whichever, she turns into this, which looks like a dandelion puff, right? It's very close to it. And the main thing we are after is blooms. I do use some of the leaf, some of the stem. But anyhow, so I'm going to show you how easy it is to make your own Arnica oil. And this could be wild-crafted Arnica, or this could be store-bought Arnica. Although pay attention to the stuff you buy from stores, because sometimes it's not actually like Arnica. It's a related plant that's kind of in the Arnica flower that they grow commercially in Mexico. So, I mean, she has similar properties, but she's not actually an Arnica. And so sometimes they do that to people. So just be sure what you're getting is actually Arnica. So my first step that you can fully and completely skip when making an infused oil is to add tallow. I'm going to be turning this oil into a balm, and I like to use healthy animal fats in my medicines because, for one, it's amazing for skin health, and for two, the fattier your salve or oil is, the further your body will pull it in. And the really cool thing about tallow is it comes from the fat of a red meat animal, and whether we like to admit it or not, we are red meat animals. So it's very, 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 very similar to our own fat. So our body craves it. It's like, oh my gosh, I need this. And so when you put it on your skin, it really soaks it in deeply. It drinks it in and it eats it, basically. And it's amazing for skin health. I mean, if you haven't tried any of my tallow offerings or tallow in general for skin health, get on it. This is deer fat that I've rendered down into tallow, but you can hop online and just search organic grass-fed beef fat, you know, or beef tallow, and you'll find it. Now, some people were like, well, can I use lard? You can, but it's going to be greasy. Your body doesn't recognize that. It's not from a red meat animal, and it has a tendency to just sit on the skin. Your body doesn't pull it in. So I don't really like lard, but you can use lard, and it's definitely been used in certain cultures for making medicine. So it just depends. But you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. If you're vegan and you don't want to use animal products, you can just use oil. Speaking of oil, you ready for how hard it is to make an infused oil? So I've got my Arnica here, and I'm going to put it in the jar. It's a little slow process because I couldn't find my funnel top, but also she's kind of delicate, so I go gentle with her or she'll be flying everywhere. I want those dandelion puffs to stay intact. So I'm just filling my jar up with Arnica. Maybe I should do this bit first. Now, some people will tell you that you need to use only wilted plant matter, and this isn't, like, the difference between curing and drying is this isn't super crazy, like, powder dry. There's a lot of debate online saying that, like, only wilted or fresh plant matter makes the best oil infusions, the strongest oil infusions, and I agree and disagree at the same time. The thing is, when you add water to oil, you get a bacterial explosion. There's no way around it. And even if you wilt your plant matter well, your shelf life is drastically reduced. Even if you end up at the 6-week period without mold or rancidity, it doesn't matter. It will go rancid quicker 6 months, 5 months, 3 months down the line, especially if there's heat involved, and we're all into summer here in the northern hemisphere. But the thing is you're right. If you put wilted herbs in a jar and you wait the 6-week max, like you have to strain at 6 weeks for the most part, that's what you want to do, you will certainly have a stronger oil infusion than if you strain out dry, like if you use dried plant matter and strain that after 6 weeks. Your fresh wilted herb infusion will absolutely be stronger than the 6-week infusion. However, the cool thing about like pretty much dry herbs when it comes to oil infusions is that you don't have to strain it 6 weeks. You can let this sit for 12 weeks. You can let this sit for 15 weeks. You can forget about it and let it sit for a year, although that's not the best thing. You want to, generally use it, strain it and use it within the first 6 months. But I'll tell you what, that oil infusion with dried plant matter in it that's been sitting for 3-4 months will absolutely be medicinally stronger, in my opinion anyhow, and experience than the wilted plant matter that's been sitting for the 6 weeks. So it's like wilted plant matter gets you a stronger infused oil in a 6-week time period than dried plant matter. However, if you use dried plant matter and you let it sit for that a really extended amount of time, you will end up with something stronger than what you get off of the fresh plant matter. So for me, I feel like it's kind of it falls into that like instant gratification zone. So I, a majority of the time, use dried plant matter in my oil infusions. And then the reason I also like to do that is because I can apply heat. Now, I don't recommend the crock pot method or the stove top method of where you like simmer your herbs in some oil for a few hours or even a few days and then consider that an herbal infusion. Really, you're just kind of like catching the most volatile properties. You're not getting like the long extracted minerals or medicinal properties. However, I will take this jar once I'm finally done filling her up. I might be able to do 2 jars, and that's cool. I will take this jar and I will sit it on top of, in a dark place still, on top of a seed heating mat on low. So the bottom of the jar is getting a constant 65-70 degree range of heat. Constant. And if you put a wool blanket over that, it'll get warmer in there. And because what's really neat is that the heat can pull out a lot of medicinal properties. And depending on the plant, that can be really helpful. So it makes her even stronger. It makes her even stronger, and not stronger in like a hurt you way, but just, I don't know, I feel like it extracts more from her. Now you can't do that. You can't do that if you're using wilted plant matter. You just can't, because water plus oil already equals bacterial. Water plus oil plus heat, things are gonna explode. And now I know a lot of people are like, oh well, I'll just do a solar infusion, where you'll take this and you'll sit it in the sun. Don't do that. I know that it makes really pretty oils really quickly, and I know that it's pretty to look at these jars up in the window and see all the color coming through. But the sun is a decayer. like her job out of many jobs is to take dead plant matter and break it down. And so it really degrades a lot of the medicinal and mineral properties, and it's doing its job, you know. So definitely consider not sitting it in the sun. If you want to just sit it there to take a picture, I get that, that's fine, but avoid it otherwise. So I will sit this in a cool, dark place for about 12 to 13 weeks, and have it going. Have it sitting in there and just waiting and waiting and waiting and extracting. So I know I jabbered like crazy there, but it takes a while to get these little puffs in there correctly. So the next step, that's super easy, is to take yourself some oil. I like avocado oil. This is pure avocado oil. It's a little bit expensive. However, she's super fatty. And so again, you start using fat in your salves and your balms. And so like if you didn't want to use tallow in this, you could use avocado oil. It's a really good option, because your body's like, oh wow, that's really fatty and I want to absorb that. So I just like to double down. And so I'm just going to take my oil and I'm just going to let it pour into there. If you follow me on Instagram, which if you're not, check out the link in my bio, but you have watched 1,000,001 videos, and I save them in my stories too, where I'm slowly pouring oil over plant material. And that's really how simple this can be. It doesn't need to be complicated. There doesn't need to be like a ton of math and figuring out, you know. And if you work with simple herbs, and one at a time, like if you have a reaction, you know what caused it. But if you're using simple herbs, your reaction will be minimal, if any, you know. So there doesn't have to be like a ton of learning. You're like, oh, you don't need to pay somebody thousands of dollars and tell you that you're accredited when you're not, to put some arnica in a jar and pour oil over it, or comfrey, or lavender, or whatever you want, you know. And so I like to stick to simples. I really do, most of the time. There are some recipes that I do that are more complex, but still, even then, the herbs in them are really safe, simple. So you're just taking your arnica. It's turned into a pretty rambling video. You're just taking your arnica, putting it in a jar, and pouring your oil of choice over it. Now, as far as your oil of choice, you know, it's your personal preference, but I want you to know that I really hate olive oil. If you're going to decide to make a wilted plant ally infusion where it's not completely bone dry, I'm going to tell you right now, olive oil likes to go rancid, especially extra virgin olive oil. She's already got a lot of plant material in her because it's olives, and she already has a tendency to go rancid. So majority of the time, the stuff you buy on the shelf, especially if you're not somewhere where olive oil sells like crazy, it is rancid. And then there's a lot of issues where a lot of it's cut with like vegetable oil and they don't tell you. So I like other oils. But if you are going to use olive oil, because I understand that it's more affordable comparative to other things, make sure that it's not extra virgin. So I'm just going to fill this all the way up to the top, and that prevents oxidation. But I'm going to make sure that I leave a tiny bit of headspace. Not enough that's really going to cause anything to oxidize, like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or less. And that's because I don't want to make a mess. Oils tend to seep out of jars. I don't care how tight you put that lid on there, it will leak out. But if I make it to where it's just got just a tiny amount of headspace left, it won't leak out as much because it can't reach the edge. And so generally you want to make sure that all of the air is out of it. Of course, I forgot my poker mabobber thing. That's the technical term. But sometimes, like you're making jam or jelly, or if you've ever made preserves before, how you run it along the edge and get the air out. And that's definitely way, way more crucial if you are deciding to make a fresh plant infusion. So the air also helps more bacteria explode. So I'm just going to put the lid on this, It's early here. It's like 8:25 or 9:25 or something like that. And I was like, I have so much to do today. And one of the things was to get this oil going. And I was like, I better make a video. So, yeah. So you're just gonna put your lid on it and then you're gonna label it. Now I have these fancy labels that I make myself just with a label making program and some store-bought Avery things, you know, like address things. And on here I have like, is it a tincture, is it a honey, is it an oil infusion, is it other? I put the date on there, I mark on there if it's wild crafted or store-bought or a mix. I put on there the product name, and if it's wild crafted, I put on where it came from. And I have to do all this so I can make a batch number. You don't have to do that. You can take just a piece of masking tape and put on there what it is and the date, so you know when to, and you can even put a date on there like when you need to extract it by if you're using wilted plant matter instead of dry. So on here I'm going to write Arnica heart leaf, because there's more than one type of Arnica, so I have to specify what I'm using. And then I'm going to write doe tallow, that is where that tallow came from. And then I'm going to write avocado oil. And then I'm going to put the date on there. And then I'm going to check oil infusion, wild crafted. When I write, I probably should have done this before because this is no use to you. And then I'm going to write where I got it from. And then I'm going to slap it on my jar. And now I'm going to take it and sit it on top of my seed heating mat in a dark place. And I'm going to let it sit for a long time. I've already got some batches going. I like to make stuff in advance. So like I might make this and then like not use it for X amount, but like you make things ahead of time. And this is the season to be getting out there and looking for these plant allies. I'm telling you, the thing I see the most is people like wanting herbal remedies when they're already sick. They're like, what can I make to help myself? And that's great, and it's good to start at some point no matter what, but it's better if you start before you need it. Now Arnica, she's really specific for pains, and she's only for external use. So like I have a bad neck from years of being homeless and carrying too heavy of a pack, so I have self-induced scoliosis, and sometimes it feels like somebody's stabbing me in the neck with a hot knife, particularly because I have a crappy pack, but somebody gifted me a good one and it's on its way, so that's amazing. But anyhow, so I use Arnica oil or Arnica gel or Arnica balm on my neck to bring down that pain and swelling. She's also pretty amazing for external like wound healing. God, my eye's itching like crazy. I think I have something in it. External wound healing, but you need to make sure that the wound is moderately healed first. Meaning, if you cut yourself, don't run and put Arnica gel on it, or balm or oil, because that will burn. It'll burn. But if a few days have gone by and there's a good scab over it, you can start putting it on there to help heal up. I've seen people do some pretty amazing things with surgical sutures. Once those have scabbed over, they've used Arnica gel. Once they've scabbed over really well. But anyhow, and so a few questions you might have is like, why do I add the tallow first? Well, I do that if you're going to add tallow into your oil infusions, because if I put it on the bottom, the heat from the seed heating mat will melt it. And then I could add tallow like when I'm making the salve, and there's a video here how to make salves, but I like to add it before and in here, that way it's actually infusing with the medicinal properties. So I find that really handy, and I just feel like it makes it more potent. That way, not only is the tallow helping pull trick your body to pull this in deeper, but the tallow itself is infused with the medicine you're wanting to pull in deeper. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to, but it does in my mind. So yeah, that was pretty simple. All I did was take Arnica, put it in a jar, dump oil over it, put a cap on it, label it, put it in a cool, a warm, dark place. I'm thinking tinctures, a warm, dark place for at least 8 to 10 weeks. Longer the better, and let it sit. Now again, if you are using wilted or fresh plant material, you need to put that in a dark, cold place. And you need to, no matter what, strain it out by 6 weeks for the most part. Or stick it in your fridge if you don't have time. So, if you like my rambling videos, if you like what I'm up to, if you like the way I teach, if you like what I'm all about, make sure to subscribe, like this video, because that super helps people see it. Talk to me in the comment section so I know that I'm not just speaking into the void, so I know that you're here with me. Come find me on Instagram if you're not here from there. You know what I mean? And you can find all that stuff on my website and more stuff about me by following the links in my bio here. And alrighty, I'm gonna go finish waking up and get to doing all the other things I have to do today. So I will see you next time, alright? Bye!